Welcome back, everyone, to the front line with Joe and Joe. Joe Pasillo, as always, joined by Joe Resinello. And once more, dear brothers and sisters, let us go into the breach on the Crusade channel, always on air and always online at crusadechannel.com, the last live radio station standing. Remember, the only social media out there worth actually socializing in is at crusadechannel.com/chat. Please also be sure to follow Joe and I wherever you find us on social media. Like, subscribe, share, do all that fun stuff that kind of helps us out a bunch. And man, do we have a really good conversation for you tonight on the Crusade channel. Because bottom line is this: we have been waiting and waiting and waiting. Joe, as conservative Republicans, we're always waiting for the politicians. As Roman Catholics, unfortunately, we're waiting on something, and we have been waiting on something a little bit more forceful for the good of the souls of others. Okay, not for ours, not for our sake. Something more forceful when it comes to Catholics who support abortion. All right. Well, Archbishop Salvatore Cordileone, in our opinion, it's a very good step, and you'll agree. I think you'll agree, because he alludes to something that I got to say, maybe the good Archbishop Joe Resinello has been watching the front line with Joe and Joe. I don't know, maybe. Okay, he should be. But he alluded to something in this letter that he wrote that my man Joe Resinello talked to you guys about several months ago. And it's a very good example. It's a very good parallel. Okay. And I think you're going to want to have that conversation. I think it was a forceful letter, and it's something that we're definitely going to talk about. We are going to focus not on abortion per se tonight, but on the reaction. Now, this letter from Archbishop Cordileone is in reaction to things that Pelosi and Biden has said against the Texas heartbeat law. Then you got all the geniuses at The View, okay? And that's only in here for entertainment purposes, okay? Because those women are, in a very negative, nauseating way, they have an entertainment value, like Joy Behar. You might agree with me on that, Joe Resinello. I don't know. Speaking of nauseating, I think Ocasio-Cortez had something to say about the Texas law. And I think you're going to find that interesting. She really, Joe, I know I said a long time ago, I'm not going to call anybody names on this show. She's a little bit of a ditzy broad.
No, her comments are embarrassing.
You know what? You know what it is? It doesn't affect us, Joe Resinello. It doesn't affect all the good people at the Crusade channel. It doesn't affect King Dude, Rick Barrett. What she says doesn't affect us. I almost feel bad for her because she embarrasses herself. When she opens her mouth, she embarrasses herself. And as much as I try to empathize, I just want to say to her, do you understand, AOC, that you sound like a moron? I'm not calling you a moron, but the things you say are moronic. Therefore, you could very easily come across to people as a moron, all right? And on this Texas bill, she just doesn't know what she's talking about. Joe, I think she's got a head full of rocks. If there's even rocks in there, I don't know, okay? Also, on, again, the reaction to abortion, the left, they've made it clear. We've said before a million times on the show at the Crusade channel, always on air and always online, there are no fence sitters in this spiritual battle. There are no fence sitters in this culture war. And the left has made it clear, okay, there's no civilians. You need to pick a side. They made it clear. I have no ill will towards you, nor does Joe. Okay, no, none of us do. If you're sitting on the fence, we hope you come off it and get on the right side. The left is not as tolerant as they say they are, and they're certainly not as tolerant as Joe and Joe. I'll tell you that right now, okay? Porn's got to come to an end. And a California judge just dealt a pretty big blow to the porn industry. We think so anyway, and we want to talk about that. It's a destructive thing, needs to be ended in America. And I think they've had a significant setback over the course of the last week. The Time's Up movement, time's up on them, Joe. Okay, and we're going to talk about that because it seems like all the abused are being all those who are abused, all the women that were abused, are all abused by Democrats. So guess what Time's Up's got to do, Joe? They got to go crawl back under their rock from whence they came. We have to fight back against this social credit system. We got to keep talking about it. We have to warn people that we're moving down the direction of the Chinese Communist Party. We cannot allow that to happen. We cannot allow them that if I jaywalk, okay, my social credit score goes down. That means I can't go into a restaurant. You know, it gets a lot worse than that. We have to talk about that. Now, last week was Labor Day. If we have time to get to it, Joe and I want to have a little discussion on we don't look at labor. I don't think, Joe, I think you might agree with me. We don't look at labor the way we should. We look at dollars. We look at hard work. Don't get me wrong. A lot of people, but even hard work is not really what we mean by productive labor. And I think Joe and I, if we have time, on the Crusade channel, that we will talk about that because it's important. It's important. Labor and the work that we do in our lives to provide for ourselves and our families. It's part of our whole lives. It's necessary. It's a gift from God. So we need to talk about that. If we have the time, we hope we do, because we think it'll be a good conversation. With that, I'm handing it over to JoJo.
As Joe said, Archbishop Cordileone made some strong statements recently. We'll talk a little bit about them. He raises the issue of excommunication for abortion advocates. Now, that's interesting. I'll give you a little excerpt from the National Catholic Register, and then I think it'll spark a very interesting conversation. In the op-ed, the good Archbishop draws a parallel between the abortion politics of today and institutional support of segregation and other forms of racial injustice in the United States in the mid-20th century, calling abortion the most pressing human rights challenge of our time. That's a very strong statement to make publicly, in my view. The good Archbishop invoked the excommunication of prominent Catholic segregationists in the early 1960s and as an example of a legitimate response to pro-abortion Catholic politicians who support a great moral evil. Now, who are we talking about? He specifically cited the example of the New Orleans Archbishop Joseph Rommel, who refused to remain silent about the racial injustice that corrupted American society in his day. And this is what Cordileone stated. He said, Rommel did not stay in his lane. Unlike several other bishops throughout this country's history, he did not prioritize, this is important, I want to emphasize it, he did not prioritize keeping parishioners and the public happy above advancing racial justice. Instead, he began a long, patient campaign to change the opinions of pro-segregation white Catholics. And on April 16, 1962, he followed through, excommunicating a former judge, a well-known writer, and a segregationist community organizer. This is the important part, 2 of the 3 later repented and died, Catholics in good standing. That is the idea. You see, when we talk about this subject, withholding communion, and even going so far as potentially excommunicating a politician who persists in promoting, obviously, an intrinsic evil that is abortion. And I absolutely agree with Cordileone, who basically puts that emphasis on abortion, basically saying that it is the issue of our time. It's about repenting. You see, this is the type of thing, when you throw down on somebody like this, listen, when the church, you could call yourself a nominal Catholic. You could say, well, listen, I believe in God. I don't believe in the church, blah, 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 blah. You're going to die. And when you get old and you get sick and you're going to die, and the church has publicly said because of your life or your position that you're excommunicated, you know what that means? That means you're going to hell, because the church has the authority to say that. You're excommunicated, cut off from God. That means you're in bad shape. And that means you're going to hell officially. Get right. And that's the idea. It's like any type of discipline. And frankly, in the cases of some of these politicians, it's written in the canons. We've talked about this time and time again on a lot of shows. Canon 915. It's as clear as day. Persistence. Persistence. That's the word. And many of these politicians are persistent. Now, will they do this? I'm going to tell you, Joe, I highly doubt it, because I don't think the Vatican will let them. Sad, but that's just my view.
Yeah, you know what it is, Joe, and it has to be said, because we get blasted, and faithful Catholics get blasted when we say that Pelosi and Biden and Durbin and the rest of them, they need to be excommunicated. That has nothing to do with me. That has nothing to do with you. Okay. I'm not interested in punishing them. Okay. Because it's not my place to. We call for excommunication for the good of their own souls. Think about the soul, the white Catholic segregationists in the South who did not repent because racism is a mortal sin. Okay. And if you die in a state of mortal sin, okay,
You go to
you go to
hell.
hell, like you said.
Church
Right.
teaching, not
But
my
if the
teaching.
two people that didn't repent, okay, and those or two people repented, probably whether it be through their own conscience, Archbishop Rommel, or both, okay, the action of excommunication brought them to repentance, and perhaps, probably, according to the teaching of the church, they repented on their deathbed, okay, they were saved. They either went to heaven or they went to purgatory to work out their sins, okay, to be purged of their sins. So we have to make that clear to people. I'm not interested in excommunicating Joe Biden. I want Archbishop Cordileone to excommunicate Nancy Pelosi because she is in danger of going to hell. It's for her soul. Joe, I'm going to try like heck to get to heaven no matter what, whether Nancy Pelosi is excommunicated or not, whether she repents or not, whether she ever changes her evil ways. Okay. I'm going to work out my salvation in fear and trembling for my family, and so are you. Okay. We call upon the bishops to do this because it's necessary for the salvation of souls. Not mine, not yours, hers. And Joe Biden's and Durbin's and the rest of all the people, all the Catholics in America, Joe, who you don't know, okay, who are not in the spotlight, who have supported this. Perhaps if they see an excommunication, what about the effect that that might have on those people to examine their own conscience and perhaps repent of their position on abortion? Am I making sense, Joe? Or
No,
it's
it's absolutely true. I mean, it's what we talked about with Cameron O'Hearn. We recently did an interview with Cameron about the film regarding the Latin Mass. What's it called? Mass of the Ages. Mass of the Ages. And we were chatting like, why write things down? Meaning the church, the canons, the various dogmas, the catechism, if you're not going to follow it. And I got news for you. If the leadership doesn't follow what they write down, how are you, like, let's just be honest. How do you expect the people to follow it? Like, it's a scandal. It's truly a scandal. And here's the thing, and this is what we talked about Cameron briefly about. To be honest with you, being a priest or a bishop is a hard job. You're called by God, and it's hard. It's much more difficult than being, say, a father, because your flock is bigger. And when you're a bishop, you don't become a bishop, to be honest with you, to wear fancy clothes. It's a tough job. And if you're not willing to do it, you shouldn't have it. And here's another thing. If the church is not going to allow you to do it, I'll be honest with you, then just step down. This is how I look at it, to be honest with you. If you're a bishop, you didn't become a priest to become a bishop. God then called you further to become a bishop. If they're not allowing you to do what is asked of you, and in this case, I'll be honest with you, and I could search every corner of my heart. And basically, I'm not speaking as a lunatic Catholic. I'm not speaking as whatever you want to call, like, people like a hardliner. It's church teaching.
Yes.
It's clear as day. It's the right thing to do. And if you're not willing to do it, and if the church, as in the higher ups in the church, aren't willing to do it, I'll be honest with you, I just say, I don't want the job then. I signed up to be a priest. Put me in a parish, and I'll just be a priest.
Well,
like,
it's a function,
sad.
I think. It is, Joe, and it's also a function, I think, unfortunately, of the times we live in. The modernist attitude that's come into the church, the infiltration of the church, because yes, it's been infiltrated. You have some people, Joe, that are deceived by modernism. Then you have those in the church that are infiltrators. I'm not pointing anybody out. I don't know. I'm not pointing fingers. But the church has obviously been infiltrated over the last 150 so years. I don't think that that's deniable at all from an historical point of view, Joe Arsenello. In other words, there are bad men in church, okay? I'm not calling any of our bishops I'm not pointing the finger saying who those bad men are, but the bad men, the wolves, okay, are undoubtedly in the church. Okay, when you look at somebody like an Archbishop Cordileone, and others. Okay, I really like Archbishop Aquila. Okay, in Denver, he does the Jericho rally. Paprocki and others. Tobin in Rhode Island. Okay, not the Tobin in Newark. Tobin in Rhode Island. Okay, I think that Archbishop Cordileone is going in the right direction. I think with this letter, what he's really done is, I think he laid the groundwork to excommunicate Nancy Pelosi publicly. I really do. I could be absolutely wrong, Joe Rossinello. I cannot predict the future. Okay, I don't have the gift of prophecy. But I will say this, it strikes me that he's doing this to lay the ground. He made the argument, Joe, in this letter. Now, if you ask me, okay, abortion is not the most pressing moral issue of our time. To me, it's the most pressing moral issue of all time. Never have human beings exhibited such evil, because in the case of abortion, as we've said on the show at the Crusade Channel a million times, it is the most unjust thing you could do, because the victims have done nothing. That's not to say others who were victims have done anything, but the babies in the womb are the most innocent, okay? And yet we allow their slaughter. So I think that by making the parallel, okay, with abortion to the civil rights movement or segregation in the South as something that is immoral and Catholics cannot be a part of, I think he has laid the groundwork first and laid the foundation first, because I think in his heart, he knows he's taking what you said. He's taking your advice at the front line with Joe and Joe. He, for the salvation of her soul, is about to excommunicate Nancy Pelosi. And it has to happen quickly, because that woman needs to repent. She is so dark, and I don't think she knows it. And maybe an excommunication might wake her up.
Well, because I'll tell you,
Joe, that's what excommunication does, Joe.
Oh, sure. I mean, that's the nature of it. It's very serious. I'll be honest with you, though, Joe. I can't even believe we're talking about this. It's so obvious. It's the bishops in 1998 wrote the document and said that abortion is intrinsic evil. If you look at the documents from John Paul II regarding politicians, again, it's crystal clear. Stop writing things if you're not going to follow it. It's embarrassing. I'll be honest with you. It's embarrassing. And it's sad. I mean, I can't even believe that we're having this discussion. I can't even believe they're having this discussion. Maybe Catholic politicians would take it seriously if they did stand up. But frankly, I'll be honest with you, I don't think they're going to. I hope I'm wrong. And listen, Joe, it is so sad. It is so sad. We have enemies, clearly, the Catholic people. We always have from the very beginning. We were fed to lions for 300 years. In all honesty, I believe the first 300 years, every single pope was martyred. I mean, that's longer than the United States existed. Right. Every single pope was killed. So, I mean, we clearly have enemies. And the enemies in the church, frankly, it's sin. And I'll tell you this, if you're doing everything you're supposed to do, whether you're an archbishop or you're a layman, what do I mean by that? You're praying daily, you're going to confession regularly, and you're receiving the Eucharist in a state of grace. The answer is as clear as day. Yeah. It's as clear as day. The way I look at it, the infiltration is simply sin. Like, you have to stick to the program, and the program is to live a sacramental life, to pray. And when you do, whether you're a genius or whether you're the simplest of people, God will direct you to the truth. And I'll be honest with you, again, I could search every corner of my heart to basically say, am I being harsh? Is this wrong? Am I saying something that, and frankly, I don't think I am. It's very clear. And yes, I'll be honest with you. I look at some of these politicians, they're baptized Catholics. Joe, it's not what they say, it's their behavior. Mm-hmm. Joe, they're going to die and stand in front of God, as I am. But when you're pushing some of these issues and imposing them on people, I got news for you. God's not impressed that you're the president, that you're the
No.
Speaker of the House. You're going to die and you're going to stand in front of him, just as I'm going to. I pray for Joe Biden every day.
So, along the lines of what you're saying, you stand in front of God and you had position in this world, don't mean jack.
Nothing.
It don't mean jack. Let's take a quick break. You're listening to the Crusade Channel. You're home for the Mike Church Show, Crusade Channel News, the Barrett Brief, the Kennedy Profession. Kennedy Hall's on the Crusade Channel from sunup to sundown. The Crusade Channel is the last live radio station standing. Stick around. We'll be right back. Welcome back, everyone, to the front line with Joe and Joe Pasillo and Joe Resinello, and we are way in the breach on the Crusade Channel, always on air and always online at crusadechannel.com, the last live radio station standing. Joe, let's jump right back into it. We're going to stay on this topic for a minute because, again, we're talking here today about Archbishop Cordileone. Okay, I've always liked Archbishop Cordileone. I thought he's come up short a little bit on this issue. Joe, I'm not going to lie. I don't want to be. We're not bishops.
They all have, though.
All right. But they've come up short, some worse than others, which I do want to give you an example that a friend of mine told me about recently that he reminded me of something that we'll talk about in a second. But this letter is a very good step. Again, for who? For us, for the Crusade Channel people, for all those who are in our chat room. Okay. Is it for us? No, it's for her own soul. Okay. And I think by laying the groundwork, I think that perhaps other bishops are going to step up. I mean, listen, I don't, unless you are a completely blind bishop, I would say to them, Your Eminence, and I would say it respectfully, we all have to stand in front of Jesus, okay, when we die, okay? Are you doing something to stomp out this moral evil? Are you? And the people that support it, because the people that listen, the babies are going to heaven. Okay. The babies are innocent. Okay. So the babies are going to heaven. All right. Now, we don't want them to die. We don't want them to be slaughtered in the womb, and they have a right to live their life. Okay. It's the people that are killing them. Those are the ones, Joe, they're in danger of eternal damnation. And Archbishop Cordileone, I just want to juxtapose something for you, Joe Resinello, and I love for your comments on this. Okay. Now, this may sound like bashing. I don't think so. I'm just going to put it out there. Look at Cordileone and what he has said. Tobin, a few months ago, said something similar. Paprocki said something similar a few months ago. This one, it was actually written in a letter. Okay. In other words, so I think they're building up to taking some serious action. But then talk about being undermined, Joe Resinello. Lori Lightfoot in Chicago. I don't know if you know about this, Joe, if you saw.
Oh, I heard. It's horrible.
And who do you blame for that? Supich is right there on the altar. He knows Lori Lightfoot's not Catholic. He knows it. Forget about her lesbianism and all that for a second. He knows she's not Catholic. She's never been a Catholic. Okay. She's not Catholic, and she's coming up for the Eucharist. And he administers the Eucharist to Lori Lightfoot?
I'm glad you brought that up.
If for no other reason, he does forget about her personal circumstance, Joe. Forget about all of that. And again, please address this. Is that he knows she's not even Catholic, and he gives her the Eucharist.
I'm glad you brought that up, because I'll be honest with you. Again, I could search every corner of my heart, and I don't understand that. You can't receive the Eucharist if you're Catholic and not be in good standing with the church. You can't receive the Eucharist if you're not Catholic. You don't have to go to the Gregorian. You see, and this is where, I'll be honest with you, it's stuff like that that I simply do not understand how people like Supich gets away with it. Because I'll be honest with you, and this is what we talked about with Cameron when we interviewed him on the Veritas Catholic Network. We'll probably post it on our Frontline TV as well, because I know a lot of the folks go to Latin Mass. I think you'd be interested in it. And it's a very good interview, and Cameron's a wonderful person, actually. I enjoyed speaking with him. But I don't understand. Like, how are you not in trouble when you do something like that? Like, I simply, Joe, I don't get it. Like, it's so not, I can't even say it's not appropriate. It's just illicit.
Right,
like,
right.
Like, and again, I could search every corner of my heart. I'm not judging him. I'm looking at the action, and I'm simply saying, you're an educated man. Right. You're formed. You went to a seminary. How don't you know that that isn't appropriate?
Right.
And you have the audacity to do that. You don't think that that doesn't cause scandal? Like, I don't know what to say.
I don't think he cares about. I honestly, with Supich's actions over the last couple of years, let's stay on him for a second, okay? Again, it's not bashing; it's just stating the facts. He undermines other bishops, and he knowingly does it, okay? And I'm going to bring up the example because many are listening right now to us at the Crusade channel, might be new to the show, Frontline with Joe and Joe. He did it to Paprocki when Paprocki issued a statement against Durbin, and Supich within a week had a videotaped photo op conference call with guess who? Dick Durbin, to talk about what? Immigration. Okay. Who was it recently? I think it was E. Michael Jones. I don't know if he said it in our interview that we did with him for the Veritas Catholic Network on AM radio. Correct me, Joe, if I'm wrong. He said, this is what you're dealing with. He gave the example of Father Hesburgh, okay, at Notre Dame, all right? that when I think it was either the 1980 election or the 1984 election, Father Hesburgh, who was running Notre Dame at the time, went to every single class on campus, every single one, and told the students, you do realize abortion is not the only issue. That's what he did. And the legacy of that, his legacy, is Supich and others. And there are others, okay? But Supich is the prime example of this. No, I'm sorry, Your Eminence. And I would tell Father Hesburgh, with all due respect, Father Hesburgh, you're wrong. You're absolutely wrong. The slaughter of innocent human beings in the womb is not the same as immigration. It's not. It's not the same as the environment. It's not the same as taxes. It's not the same as the rights of workers and labor. Okay, or the relationship between labor and capital. Not even in the same ballpark. No. You could vote for someone who's pro-abortion or pro-choice, Joe Rossinello, if it's better than the alternative. You could actually vote for someone who will reduce abortions. If you're a politician and you're Catholic, you could pass legislation or vote for legislation that might not abolish abortion, but reduces abortions. The church is understanding in some of the positions that we're in, okay? But you cannot blatantly support abortion and get the vote of a Roman Catholic. And Father Hesburgh is or Cardinal Supich is just like Father Hesburgh. Was it our interview with Michael Jones that he pointed that out, or did I see that separately?
I don't recall, but I do remember him specifically speaking about Hesburgh. I mean, clearly, because Michael Jones taught at St. Mary's, which is for a while, which is near Notre Dame. He had some comments, and he definitely changed the Catholic narrative when it comes to education in America. Which, I mean, Notre Dame lost me when I saw an old priest praying on their campus, basically in support of life, and they dragged him off in handcuffs. I actually saw that. You could actually,
yes.
That disturbed me like I can't even tell you, dude. How that is possible. Like, if I was the president of Notre Dame and I saw that, I would have a fit. That a priest on a Catholic campus who's praying for the life of innocent children is dragged off, and he's old, like really old. Right. That is great. That was one of the most disgraceful things I have ever seen. ever.
I think the head of Notre Dame at the time was Father Jenkins. All right.
Jenkins.
And did you ever hear the story Michael Voris says about my Father Jenkins? Father Michael Voris ran into Father Jenkins when Michael Voris, this is a few years ago, went down to Notre Dame, and he went to question Father Jenkins. Now, again, I'm taking Michael Voris's word for this. He said that Father Jenkins grabbed him by the lapels and said, "This is the most Catholic school in the country," or something similar to that. All right, and it's like, is that a joke? I mean, there's even people that have gone to Notre Dame that I know in my life, or I've heard through some mutual friends that have said and commenting on Notre Dame. They went to Notre Dame. Kids that went to Seton Hall Prep and then later went to Notre Dame. Okay, they said Notre Dame doesn't seem very Catholic. There's, and if you go to that school, Joe Resinello, yeah, okay, you have to even say, the religious imagery. Okay, there's religious imagery and statues and things like that. But when Barack Obama goes there, you cover up the statue of Jesus. So how Catholic are you that you cover up the statue of Jesus in the presence of a pagan like Barack Obama? So I don't, I don't get it. Like, or maybe we do get it, and we're just trying to be what, Joe? We don't want to just.
Well, I don't
want to beat people up.
No, listen, Joe. Like a lot of these schools now, can you get a Catholic education? Because I'll just use my school as an example. I went to a Jesuit college, University of Scranton. If you wanted a Catholic education, you could have found it there. I mean, I at the time wasn't a practicing Catholic. I mean, I believe it or not, I did go to church when I went there. I'm surprised I wasn't struck by lightning when I walked into the church. But at the same time, I mean, did the school impart some Christian ideals to people? Absolutely. Service to others. Some of the best humans I've ever met went there. But did it drip Catholicism? No. And no. I'm just being honest. Are there schools out there that do? Yes. And there's some new schools coming up. I think, and at Notre Dame, I've actually been there twice. I've gone to 2 football games there years ago. I'm sure if you search it out, you could find good teachers there. You could find good priests there. It's like anything in life, just like at the University of Scranton. I know people who became priests that I went to school with, joined religious organizations, 2 of which who were my peers are CFRs. So, I mean, and that's a fantastic order, went to Scranton. I mean, there's good everywhere. But what I think happens to a lot of schools like the Notre Dames, like the Georgetowns, they become bigger than the church themselves, in a sense. It's almost like an icon. Right. A lot of those people go on to become very, very, very important people in the world. I mean, you have to be pretty smart to go to Notre Dame, to go to Notre Dame Law School. I mean, like, these are people that become movers and shakers. They become CEOs of companies. Yeah. So I think it's like a lot of things, all the people who are listening to us today, we have right now, we have 392 people in the chat room. All the people who are listening to us, wherever you're at, the schools that are in your town. I mean, there's a lot by me, very prominent high schools. Joe Pasillo went to one of them, Seton Hall Prep. I mean, they churn out people. Joe's brother went to Yale from Seton Hall Prep. These kids go to these schools. Frankly, the focus, sadly, isn't building saints. That should be the focus of a Catholic school, and it's not. And
do you think an old Italian mother in the 1940s whose son or daughter gets into Notre Dame, you think they wanted to send them there because they thought they were going to conquer the world? They sent them there because it was the best Catholic education that you were going to get. And I'm sorry. Well, I'm not sorry. Okay. Traditional Catholic education before it was corrupted as you see it in America. Again, hearkening back to E. Michael Jones and the conversations that he's had with us, when they taught at Catholic universities from a Thomistic philosophical worldview, when they taught Aquinas, okay, and the education and the curriculum was informed by natural law and Thomas and the philosophy of St. Thomas Aquinas, these schools did make saints. Schools like Notre Dame, you got the best education. You were exposed to everything: science, literature, art, philosophy, rhetoric, Latin. Okay. In other words, you got a hardcore education that was not meant to put millions of dollars into your pocket, was meant to make you a fully formed Catholic. That's what a classic Catholic education does. And even if you're a knucklehead, like a lot of young people are, like myself when I was young, like you've admitted it before, okay, that Catholic education stays with you. That stays with you, okay? And not just so you can go out and make money. It'll catch up to you, and you'll harken back in your life to your Catholic education, probably, and be a good Catholic. But that's nowadays. You send your kid to Notre Dame, you're better off. Well, not better off. You're infinitely better off not sending them to Notre Dame. Send them to Christendom, Franciscan.
Oh, I agree 100%.
What's that list, Joe? Tell all the good people out there that list.
It's a Newman list. There's,
you
know, you got Wyoming Catholic, University of Mary in North Dakota, Belmont Abbey in North Carolina. I mean, if one of my children was to go there, I would sleep well, knowing that they are getting a legitimate Catholic education. But it's also the premium. Like we'll just compare, say, Rutgers with, we're in New Jersey, Rutgers University, and say we'll just use a Catholic. I'm not picking on a school. I'll use my school, Scranton.
University, don't matter.
Okay, Seton Hall or Scranton. I mean, Scranton's, I think, close to $60K now. Rutgers is probably half that. If you're smart, now, you know, like I know many people I went to college with at Scranton. They knocked the ball out of the park in terms of worldly success. I know many. Some of my roommates, actually. I mean, literally, they're very wealthy, did very well, you know, in the world. But that's not why you send your kid to a Catholic school. You could send your kid, say you study accounting. You study accounting at Rutgers, you study accounting at Scranton. The premium, the $30,000 premium of sending your kid to Scranton versus sending your kid to Rutgers is they're going to be formed.
Right.
Formed in the faith, formed as a full person. I send my children, I have 3 children in Catholic school. Is it perfect? No. But there's something to that education. I went to Catholic school. I also went to public school. It forms the whole person. Also, what you see in Catholic school is this. Where we live in New Jersey, it's expensive, meaning the taxes are high. All the parents that send their kids to Catholic school in New Jersey are paying taxes and paying for an education. Yes. Why do I bring that up? Because they know what sacrifice is, and that bleeds into other avenues of their life. You see, there's a difference in those parents, because many parents will not do that because they say, listen, I'm paying taxes. You're going to the public school. That's why we moved to this town. It's got a great public education. And there are many towns in New Jersey. Again, we're not talking about, I know what's going on. I'm talking purely from a test score perspective. You look at the national average. There are many towns in New Jersey that the national average is blown out of the water. High SAT scores, public education, but you're paying for it.
Right.
Obviously, you're getting a lot of crap that goes along with it. Why do I bring this up? Because you're sacrificing. So back to Rutgers and back to Scranton. Why am I going to spend that extra money? What are you giving my kid?
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, as a guy that works hard and saving for education for my kids, what's the difference? It's 2 accounting degrees.
Right.
What's the difference?
There is no difference. There is none. And you're right. Just from a practical point of view, if these schools, now again, if your child, if you want to send them to some of the schools that some of our good people in the chat room are mentioning, okay, on the Crusade channel, always on air and always online at crusadechannel.com. If you want to send your kids, find these good schools, look at the Newman list, okay? But if you're not going to do that, and you got a choice between Scranton or Seton Hall's got to be 55 G's, okay? Scranton or Seton Hall or $30,000 Rutgers. Yeah, again, I'm not bashing my school, but the bottom line is you're not going to get you're going to get at least the same education. You're going to be exposed to all the same stuff, okay?
Oh, absolutely.
So you're going to be exposed to rainbow flags. Recently, or a few months ago, Michael Hitchborn went up to Seton Hall, my school, with TFP, and they went down to Newark to Seton Hall University. I haven't checked recently if the Cardinal did anything about it. Okay, they have a radio station, WSOU, that's broadcasting satanic lyrics and these bands that are just dark and seedy and disgusting and demonic. Okay, why should I send my kid to Seton Hall? And I loved the prep, and I loved SHU. Okay, I'm not bashing my school. Okay, but they fall short in a lot of ways. Like you said, Joe, if my kid's going to be an accountant, I'm better off just spending half the money.
Go to Rutgers. I don't, and that's what I would say to the president. I mean, like, what do you think? Like, for instance, though, you talk Christendom College and say you're going to study, like, I'm going to make it up, biology, and you know, biology at Rutgers. Well, you're getting something else. You're getting formed, because that's the thing. That's the reason why I believe in a Catholic education, because there's a lot more than just educating the mind. There's a lot more to life than just being well read or being, like, you know, training in something that can make you money specifically. I mean, there's many majors specific to making money, like being an architect, being a lawyer, being a CPA. I mean, there's something to that, but it's also, you have to form the whole person. And that's very important to me. And that's why I want my kids to go to Catholic school, and they do a good job of it. I mean,
Right.
even though I, you know, wasn't, you know, practicing as a Catholic when I went to the University of Scranton, one thing I will say that the Jesuit schools do very well is they promote service to others. You have to be a person for others. That's important in life. That's very important. Now, again, listen, a lot of other nonsense goes on. I get it. My eyes are wide open. I get it. But my point is, there's a premium to a good Catholic education. New schools are coming up, like you mentioned, Christendom, Franciscan, Belmont Abbey, Wyoming Catholic. And frankly, if I was going to spend big money, that's where I'd send my kids. Notre Dame, Fordham, Boston College. Frankly, I don't see it. And I wouldn't do it. The only way I would go along with that, I'll be truthful with you, if my kid got a full ride. Say got a full ride.
That I probably, but then I'm going through the faculty, because if they're going to Notre Dame, then I want to make sure my kid takes the Patrick Deneen's.
No, I get it. I get it. And they're there.
Charlie Rice died a few years ago. Charlie Rice was a traditional voice on Notre Dame's campus. I'm sure there's many others. Okay. So you got your libs, like Pete Buttigieg's father was there. Okay. Who, again, according to E. Michael Jones, was no scholar. All right. But they brought him in there. But for every one of him, there probably is a Patrick Deneen, a Charlie Rice, somebody who is authentically Catholic, is going to teach from an authentically Catholic worldview. We have, Joe, about a minute or so until the break. I did want to put a finer point on Cordileone in this letter, okay? Because I think it's important to point this out to our audience at the Crusade Channel, always on air and always online, at crusadechannel.com. Bishop Rommel did not have it easy when he took this action against these Catholic segregationists, Joe, okay? And just to put a finer point on it, because now you can imagine those who are in favor of abortion. Keep in your mind where I'm going with this, okay? Those who are in favor of abortion, if Cordileone and others excommunicate Biden and Nancy Pelosi and Durbin, okay? He said many white Catholics, this is Cordileone now, many white Catholics were furious at this disruption of the long entrenched segregationist status quo. Well, we've had a long entrenched abortion status quo in this country for the last 50 years, okay? They staged protests and boycotts. Rommel patiently sent letters urging a conversion of heart, but he was also willing to threaten opponents of desegregation with excommunication. The man didn't have it easy, Joe. It's not like he wrote a letter, sat back in his chair, opened up some scotch and said, let's see what happens. They protested him, okay? Can you imagine that? Can you imagine that? In other words, Catholics protesting for segregation against a bishop that's saying, listen, you have to look at this for what it is. This is evil. Racism is evil. I can't wait to see the reaction when one of these politicians, Joe, gets excommunicated, because I think you're going to see the same thing from pro-abortion Catholics. We're going to talk about a couple of them when we come back from the break, okay? Because I could see them protest, especially now, All right, in 2021, I could see them protesting in San Francisco against Cordileone. But let's take a quick break. You're listening to the Crusade Channel. You're home for the Mike Church Show, Crusade Channel News, the Barrett Brief, and the Kennedy Profession. From sunup to sundown, the Crusade Channel is the last live radio station standing. Stick around. We'll be right back. Welcome back, everyone, to the front line with Joe and Joe. Joe Pasillo, as always, joined by Joe Rossinello, and we are in the breach. Archbishop Cordileone went into the breach. So guess what? Joe and I are in the breach. We're all going into the breach. You know what I mean? Because abortion, Joe, is really heating up, okay? Really, even more so than it has been in the last few years. States are getting more bold, as we've seen with Texas, okay? And that's why we're having this conversation tonight. For now, probably for the next segment or two, we're going to stick with. Now we're going to talk about the reaction to the Texas law. Some of that reaction coming from so-called pro-choice Catholics. We don't even know what that means anymore, and we'll tell you what that means in a second. Okay. But you're with us at the Crusade Channel, always on air and always online at crusadechannel.com, the last live radio station standing. Make sure you get into the chat room. Okay. And that's at crusadechannel.com/chat, the only social media out there worth actually socializing in. So, Joe, I think that again, we're trying to be objective here. We're not going to paint an overly rosy picture of this. Okay. We're not going to be pessimistic about it. We'll be patient. I think Archbishop Cordileone is being patient, but let's pray for him. And let's pray. Look, Joe, he's got control of his diocese, okay, San Francisco. So I don't know if Cordileone can excommunicate Dick Durbin. That would have to be Paprocki, okay, or like when Tobin in Rhode Island threatened one of the Kennedys with excommunication. But let's hope, for the sake of Nancy Pelosi's soul, Archbishop Cordileone comes out and says, Mrs. Pelosi, you are hereby excommunicated. You need to repent of your position on abortion. Let's hope that happens. Now, speaking of Christians, okay, I don't even know how some people, Joe Rossinello, I don't even know how they use the word, okay? Let's talk. Let's give a little entertainment factor tonight. Aside from Joe and I being completely and always entertaining, all right? But when we talk about The View, that becomes entertaining because ridiculousness, inanity, okay, stupidity, all right, that's all pretty entertaining, especially when it's on ABC. So let's talk about that.
Well, Kristen Marsh from Life News brings us this one. Whoopi Goldberg from The View, and Joe said it very rightly. They were talking about the abortion law that was just passed in Texas. And this is what she had to say. This is, again, Whoopi Goldberg. She claimed abortion was her right as a Christian parent. Let's go to a direct quote. She said, because for me, if you believe in me as a Christian parent, then I will know what's best for my child. And if my child has been raped or has been molested, allow me to take care of my child and my family. Now, here's the deal. Why
Joe,
do they?
Joe, please tear the ridiculousness of that statement apart, because it's utter ridiculousness.
Well, why? Like, first of all, I want to make two comments. One, that's exactly what you're doing to my child. You're forcing my children. Well, my children don't go to public school, but if they did, to learn things that go against my faith. So you're doing that, and you're supporting that as it stands. That's number one. And how you don't connect that, I don't understand. Number two, why is it any time an abortion law goes against the pro-choice side, they always bring up rape? Do you know that the percentage is less than 1% of all abortions that result in rape? It's one. And now I'm not saying I'm for that,
right?
And I'm not saying that that's not a challenge, and as well as painful beyond comprehension. I don't even want to imagine something like that. Particularly, I have a daughter and a wife. Let me first say that. However, abortion, the focus of abortion is not the result of rape, yet that is always the straw man argument that's put forth. Always. AOC makes you know, a comment along those lines too. We're going to get to her in a little bit. But I always crack up when I read that.
Right.
I say to myself, that's not the lion's share of abortions, Whoopi. By the way, the lion's share of abortions are Black children.
Right.
85% of Planned Parenthood clinics are in walking distance from minority areas. We've covered that on shows time and time again. That's systemic racism.
Yeah,
right there.
Sure it is. Sure it is. No, you're absolutely correct. What bothered me about her is she says, just the way she says, because for me, if you believe in me as a Christian parent, if I believe in you as a Christian parent, you don't have the right to slaughter an innocent human being in the womb, particularly if it's your grandchild. You're saying that you're acting in a Christian way, or I'm supposed to accept your version of Christianity when you say that by taking care of what you define as taking care of your daughter who's pregnant is to help her if she chooses to have an abortion, to kill your grandchild. You're insane. You're not a reasonable person if you take that position. There is no logos in you if you even think that you could justify the slaughter of your grandchild by saying that you're a Christian and I have to trust you. No, if you think that it's even an option to kill your grandchild, number one, you're not a Christian, and number two, I don't trust you with your daughter's life or your grandchild's life.
Well,
I think I think you're a very evil person, because it's not that you're mistaken in thinking it's okay to have that abortion, okay, or bring your daughter to have an abortion. It's that you're calling yourself a Christian and saying that it's okay. Well, that's evil. There is no way that Christ, Joe, I'm sorry to cut you off. There is no way that Jesus Christ, no matter what the warlock senator from Georgia says, there is no way that Jesus Christ, if he was walking the earth today, or from his throne in heaven, is looking down upon us with anything other than anger over the fact that we allow the slaughter of his creation in the womb. Okay? So give me a break, Whoopi. You're not acting as a Christian, and I don't trust you.
Well, Archbishop Cordileone commented, we spoke about him on previous segments just today. He said, you cannot be a good Catholic and support expanding a government-approved right to kill innocent human beings. That's true. I don't know how people, well, I know how people don't see it. Joe, when you're not living in a state of grace, you're blind. I mean, sin blinds you. We talked about that with E. Michael Jones. We've talked about that with a number of people who've come on our show. They don't see clearly. You see, they don't see clearly, coupled with the fact that outside of basically taking the life of an innocent child, which abortion is, you're also hurting women. You see, if that was to happen, say, to my own daughter, I'm concerned for her, not just the baby, for her. And when a woman has an abortion, and this is not my opinion, you could look at various organizations that cater to women who've had abortions. We've talked to a number of people on our show, one of which is Teresa Bonapartis, who works with women who've had abortions to help heal them. Women who have abortions, there's consequences. They drink, they're suicidal, they don't have successful marriages, they could become promiscuous. These are not my opinions. Do the research. So while obviously there is a concern, clearly, I mean, that you're taking the life of an innocent human being, and science shows that, it's also for your own child. That you're basically going to. Teresa Bonapartis, I mean, it's no secret. We've interviewed her twice. Her father pushed her to have an abortion as a young girl. I believe she was 17 years old. And she had a saline solution abortion. She saw her son, and it affected her. You see, and that was an event at 17. She's, an adult many years later. So, I mean, like, again, these people are blind. They're blind. And I'm not just saying, like, I'm not saying that from a position of being superior. It's just a sad reality they cannot see. And
They
it's
kept Joe. Joe, you know
sad. They
what? You know what
choose
makes
not
me.
to.
Well, that you just hit the nail on the head. They choose not to. They also, I want to make a point on the Crusade Channel, always on air and always online at crusadechannel.com, the last live radio station standing. I always want to make a point. Part of their blindness, Joe. Now, again, remember, we're always told, you know, a couple of jooches like us from North Jersey, okay, we're always
Oh, that's
told
a
that
good
we're
word. I haven't heard that one in a while.
Juice. I've been called that word many times. But a couple guys like us and all the good people in our chat room and the people that are commenting and all that, we're the dummies. We remember that. Okay, they're the smart ones. If you're on the left in America, Joy Behar, Whoopi Goldberg, and Sonny Hostin, and all these people on The View and people on CNN, and they're the smart people, and we're the dummies. They can't stand when you draw the rightful Joe Resinella, the correct parallel between their dehumanization of the human being in the womb and the Nazis' dehumanization of the Jews, the segregationist dehumanization of blacks, also the slave owning class in America, their dehumanization of African slaves. They hate when you draw that parallel. You want to know why? Because it's unassailable logic. They talk about the human being in the womb the same way the Nazis talked about the Jews, the same way the Soviets talked about their enemies like kulaks and others that they wanted to get out of the way, the same way that white slave owners in America, they justified the theft of the theft of the labor of the Africans that they forced to come here in chains. It's all justification, yet they don't think that they're in the same boat as those Nazis, communists, and slave owners. And they really get mad when guys like us and good people say, you do realize that you do the same thing they do. Your view on this is the same as theirs. You don't think that that human being is a human being because you say so. Not because science says it, not because the church says it, because they say so. I say it's not a human being. I say it's a clump of cells. I. You know who else said I? Satan. That's why he's in hell. Okay? You
Dude,
don't
you pulled like
determine.
a church lady statement there. That was like Saturday Night Live. Satan?
Satan.
Remember that character?
Yeah. But that's the truth. And they don't want to see that. The smart people don't want to see that they do the same damn thing as many of the evil people that we've seen in the last 100 or 150 years. They do the same damn thing when it comes to babies in the womb. And you know what, Joe? That's why we're here. That's why King Dude has his station, the Crusade Channel. That's why we're saying, call them out. Compare them to Nazis. Tell them, say, your view's the same as Nazis. You have the same view as slave owners. And let them squirm and try to get, they can't, Joe. Again, two words, unassailable logic. Okay. But
Well,
that's what they
we all
do.
know. I mean, Robert George, I follow him on social media, and I was a part of a chat recently on his thread on Facebook. He thinks that Roe v. Wade is going to be overturned. Now, I don't take that position. I don't think it will be. I hope I'm wrong, but he does. He's a lot smarter than me, and he is a lawyer, a Harvard-educated lawyer. So, I mean, he believes it's going to be. And something I commented on that thread that got some support was, if that is to take place in America, if what Robert George has stated, that in his legal view, he believes that Roe v. Wade will be overturned, you will see riots in this country. This is what I stated, like we have never seen before.
Can I
Ever.
Joe,
Ever.
let me just harken back to what we said in the last segment, all right, about Bishop, I guess it was Bishop Rommel in New Orleans. I said he had to do this, and when he did, there were riots. Okay, there were protests. The same thing's going to happen, but you want to know what? They still have to do this. Well, getting back to the bishops, they still have to take that action. As far as it goes, Joe, it looks like states could pass laws. Okay, It looks like states could pass laws like the Texas heartbeat law, and the Supreme Court's not going to, this Supreme Court is not going to touch it. In other words, now again, I didn't read as much into it as I should have, but I'm not completely ignorant on this. I do know that Roberts, the coward, he went with the liberals. Okay. But Kavanaugh, Gorsuch, Barrett, along with, of course, Alito and Thomas, they said we don't need to hear this case. That's, Joe, again, unless I'm missing something, I'm sure I am, okay, but at least right now, the way I see it, that's them saying Texas has the right to do that. They have a right to do that. And other states are going to follow. And then let it come full bore to the Supreme Court. Let the case be heard. We know the four are all going to go on the other side. Let's see what Kavanaugh, Gorsuch, and Barrett do then. Okay? And if they do the same thing, Roe versus Wade is going to get overturned. And on top of it, we always say on the show, Joe, that that's more of a political solution, a legal solution. Okay, obviously we live in an immoral country right now on a number of levels, not just abortion, but it would be a good thing for the reason I said earlier. It will reduce the number of babies who are slaughtered in the world. Of course.
I mean,
at least it's saving babies.
Absolutely. I mean, when I talk about the riots, that should not weigh in on the decision, because again, we're not here. It's not a popularity contest, but clearly we have seen people cave. We've seen this time and time again when it comes to doing the right thing. But there is no question in my mind that if Roe is overturned, because it's about casual sex, Joe, it's America's favorite pastime. By overturning Roe, you're putting a huge, basically, like road bump in people's lifestyles.
Can I comment on that for you real quick? I heard something that, I like to think, Joe, that I think about a lot of things, all right, or something dawns on me, but obviously that's why I pay attention, because I hear something, I say, holy crap, I didn't think about that, okay? Somebody brought up the men who simply want Roe versus Wade not overturned and abortion to be legal on demand because they're adulterers. And they need abortion. They need abortion,
Joe.
They brought up Jeffrey Toobin. I don't know the example. I won't go into the whole thing. That Jeffrey Toobin from Disgraziad CNN, the guy who was not to be, you know what he did on the Zoom video, right, where he didn't realize people were still there and he was doing things you shouldn't be doing. But I heard he knocked the girl up and he coerced her. And forced her and put pressure on her to have an abortion. Now, I don't know all the details of whether or not she got an abortion, but see, that's the mentality, though, is why I bring it up. There's a lot of men, Joe, who don't want abortion overturned because
it's men and women.
They got their gumads, and if the gumad gets pregnant, the first thing they're going to say is get rid of it.
Joe, that's a given.
They're going to pull a Tony Soprano, get rid of it.
Of course. I mean, that's men and women. I mean, like that's why, like I said, the argument gets confused. People talk about the rape issue. People talk about it's pro-woman. People talk about it's my body. All of that is nonsense. It's about casual sex.
That's it.
I've said that time and time again. And that is why, if this is to happen, you will see people, dude, Republicans too. This is not just like, Democrats.
Right.
Republicans have casual sex too. Like you said, married people have casual sex.
Joe, you don't think there's a lot of pro-life? You don't think there's a lot of pro-life Republicans, okay, that talk that way to get their positions, all right, to get elected? Yet they got their gumad. That's another word. That's an Italian word for a mistress, everybody. So when I say gumad, that's an Italian word for a mistress. You don't think they have mistresses? And then when a push comes to shove, they're going to take their mistress right down to the first Planned Parenthood.
Absolutely. And that's why, like I said, my one friend, John, who I commute with, said this. We were talking about the issue. The cat's out of the bag. Like, that's why I don't think politically this will ever get solved. I do think it will get solved, though, because it's such a sin against God. because it's innocence. God will stop it. God is very patient with people. We've seen this throughout, Christendom. He's very patient.
We've seen
But
this
then,
with the Jews in the Old Testament too.
absolutely. But eventually he will pull a plug on it. Politically, though, I'll be honest, I don't see it. I don't see people. I mean, they always talk about back alley abortions. New York's already legalized back alley abortions. You don't have to be a doctor to perform an abortion in the state of New York.
Joe, let's take a quick break. Let's take a quick break. You're listening to the Crusade Channel. You're home for the Mike Church Show, Crusade Channel News, the Barrett Brief, and the Kennedy Profession. From sunup to sundown, the Crusade Channel is the last live radio station standing. We'll be right back. Welcome back, everyone, to the front line with Joe and Joe. Joe Pasillo and Joe Resinello. We're way in the breach on the Crusade Channel, always on air and always online at crusadechannel.com, the last live radio station standing. The chat room is open. The only social media out there worth actually socializing in is online at crusadechannel.com/chat. I haven't mentioned it earlier. I'll mention it now. If you like Joe and Joe, if you like what we do, and you want to contribute something financially, not a lot, or if you want to, sure, knock yourself out and empty the bank account for us. But we are on Patreon, patreon.com/the frontline with Joe and Joe. If you want to help to support us with a few bucks every month, it would be greatly appreciated. And as always, we are grateful for all your prayers. So yeah, Joe, now here's what bothers me, Joe Garcino. Let's stay with The View for just a minute, okay? We won't dwell on it too much longer. Now, my wife, who has a loving heart. She does, okay? She's a pain in my butt, all right? But she's got a loving heart. She can't stand Sonny Hostin. Now, my wife makes a good point, okay? If you're Catholic and you're on a platform like The View or any place else, and you don't agree with the church, shut up. Shut up. And stop telling other Catholics that you are more Catholic than them. I'm not judging Sonny Hostin. I don't know her heart. But what she says is just flat out wrong. Okay. She says, she declared, Joe Resinello, she declared, okay. Let me say that again. She declared that as a Catholic, she believed abortion was a sin and morally wrong. I would say, why, Sonny? Because it's murder? Well, there are laws against murder. You get it? You get it through your head? Anyway, she says, but she was always pro-choice. I agree with you, Whoopi. Ooh, there's a shock. Sonny agrees with Whoopi, okay? But my point is...
Dude, that sounds like a cartoon. Sonny agrees with Whoopi. What the hell is that? That's a cartoon.
Either that or something that would show up on a porn site somewhere, which we'll dissect later on. But it bothers me. And then they, again, Joe, we have to, from the rooftops, we have to shout them down when they start talking about gun control and the death penalty. Abortion's got nothing to do with any of that. I'll make a damn argument that to own guns is pro-life because you want to protect human life. You're not looking to go out and shoot people. You have firearms to protect yourself and your family, to protect others who might be defenseless. That is pro-life. We're not interested in people dying, getting shot up by some wacko 17-year-old in a high school. Of course, we're against that. But I hate when they try to make what do you call it, Joe? A parallel between all these other issues and abortion. All right. It's the whole seamless garment argument, which is a nonsensical argument. I don't even know why we allow even priests say it. I don't even know why we allow them to say it. Like we mentioned about Hesburgh. Well, abortion's not the only issue. In modern times, in the modern world, it is the only issue. And God will not be happy as long as abortion is legal. I'm sorry. I am not speaking for God, but I cannot believe he is happy with us while abortion is allowed.
Well, I mean, obviously it's a straw man argument when you start talking about guns and, however, though, when I did read that, in order to be pro-life, there are other things. To be truly a person of life means that you are for, what is it? Womb to tomb. You know,
Mhm.
like you have to be pro-life. They again put forth, you know, different ideas. You know, obviously they're straw man, you know, gun control. What does that have to do with abortion? Nothing.
Right.
However, though, you know, abortion is obviously a big piece of the pro-life position, but also
Mhm.
taking care of the elderly. I mean, there's a whole slew of other things. If one is to say that they are pro-life, truly pro-life, that one has to follow down that same road. I mean, also in that same article, which I didn't think was fair or accurate for that matter, Joy Behar, I believe it was Joy Behar. Yes, it was. She said, they also don't care about the kids after they're born. They drop them like a hot rock. Now, that is not true. I mean, we've interviewed a number of people on our show, organizations like Chris Bell's organization, Good Counsel Homes. This is in New Jersey, and actually they're across the United States. Excuse me, the Sisters of Life, which are
Mhm.
also across the United States as well as in Canada. I mean, there are plenty of organizations that will take care of you. I mean, Chris Bell's organization, Good Counsel Homes, and I basically definitely throw this out there to all the good people in the chat room and at the Crusade channel. Support them. It's a phenomenal grassroots
Right.
organization that helps women who are in trouble pregnancies. They take care of them for 2 years.
Joe, can I just chime something in on that?
Sure.
Just so just as a fact, okay? Texas also provides. See, now this is where Joy Behar should get a little salt, put it on her foot before she puts it in her mouth, so it tastes a little bit better. Okay? She says that. See, she detracts from people, Joe. She's a liar. She doesn't care that she's a liar, but it's for us to call her a liar. Texas puts $100 million, $100 million for crisis pregnancies, for all the things that these women need. Okay, for diapers, for help getting a job. $100 million. That's just on a state level. Okay, 100 million. So she's lying about these people in Texas, and she's lying about a Catholic governor because Governor Abbott is Roman Catholic. Okay, she's lying about him. And that's what's disgusting about her. They just want to drop him like a hot rock with that annoying Jewish twang that she has. Okay. Oh, is that going to get us? Is that going to get us in trouble, Joe? Okay. She could say what she wants about Catholics. Can't say anything about her though. But she lies. She lies as soon as she opens her mouth because they try to suggest that we don't care about the mothers or the babies after they're born when Texas just proved, and that's 100 million. Okay, and there's a lot of people that feel that way. But Joe, can I make a point to you? I'd like to know what you think about this. I heard Matt Walsh a while ago. Okay, he said, "Why do I have to be coerced by a woman who's threatening to have an abortion? That if I don't pay for her to have the baby, if I don't provide her for with my money, somehow that justifies her having an abortion." Okay, now we all have the obligation to help the poor as Catholics. We're called to do that. Okay. But is every woman that let's say for argument's sake is needs assistance or whatever the case may be? Some women, Joe, are just deadbeats. Am I supposed to just be held? That's supposed to be held over my head that if I don't help her with money out of my pocket, in other words, her thing is, well, now I have to have an abortion because you won't give me your money. And I think that that's a sound argument. That's a sound argument. You're gonna go, well, kill your baby if I don't give you tax money. Go get a job. That's what the older generations would have done. They would say, no, you're going to have your baby. Your mom will take care of the baby. You go out and get a job. In other words, you take care of your baby when you come home. There's a lot of ways around this. You don't have to go out and kill your baby. All right. So spare me that nonsense. But leaving that aside, Texas again puts $100 million into what you just talked about. So
Well,
she's a liar.
it's not fair. That is all I would say. But obviously, listen, that show is playing to a narrative. I mean, uh, you know, it's like everything else that's on television. People want to be affirmed in their position. No one's interested in the truth anymore, Joe. It's sad. People,
Right.
that's why people like Sean Hannity make money, and that's why people like Rachel Maddow make money. People want to sit in their chair and be affirmed. They don't want to be challenged. They don't want to have to question their position. And frankly, it's sad. It's very sad. I mean, you know, that show is disgraceful, but also what's even more disgraceful is it's been around and people watch it.
Oh,
I mean,
it's been
like
around
it
for a
wouldn't be
long
on
time.
network television if people didn't watch it. I
Right.
mean, there are people who prescribe to that point of view. That's why they call
Right.
it The View, and people watch it. I mean, that's why, you know, the problems in America run deep. I mean, you know, they run real deep, actually. I mean, because you look at what's being sold, and they're clearly selling something,
Right.
and people buy it, and they believe it to their core. It's simply sad, you
It
know,
is.
and that's like, to my friend John's point, the cat's out of the bag, particularly on the sexual stuff in America. To go back to you know, say how things were before the sexual revolution that took place, culturally speaking, in the 60s, Joe, I'll be honest with you, I don't think it's possible. I don't think there's a person alive that could make people do it. They're not interested. They're
Right.
simply not interested. And it's sad. I mean,
It
like,
is.
and,
It
and
is.
lives are destroyed. You see, that's what's even the worst part about it. I mean, we all know people that their lives have been destroyed by pursuing these behaviors. I mean, like, you know, when you're a kid, I'm not saying it's good. It's not. But
Mhm.
as life moves on, it's a dead end, and it destroys your life. Period.
No,
End of story. It's a fact.
it is. No, it's absolutely a fact. And I said it before on the Crusade channel, always on air and always online at crusadechannel.com. I wrecked my life living that way for 20 years. Wrecked it. Without the grace of Jesus Christ. Now, was I the worst offender in the world? It doesn't matter. It's a destructive lifestyle. Whether you're somewhat into the mud or you're way deep into the mud, it will destroy you. It destroys a person. We'll talk about it more when hopefully we get to it in a couple stories when we talk about the victory recently in courts against the porn industry. This stuff wrecks you both in this world and the next. You could tell everybody out there just how happy you are, okay? And I'm not going to believe you.
They
If
don't
you're
even
living
believe it,
like
Joe.
this, well, no, you're right. But Joe,
They
you
don't
said
even
it a
believe
million
it.
times, Joe. You said it a million times. But a lot of people, sin blinds people. A lot of these people, Joe, the scales have grown very, very thick. And it's only through hardship that those scales come off. Let's move on from the View. But I do want to say this, just as I said, Joe, because like I said, this conversation on the View is going to be entertaining. So this should give everybody out there at the Crusade channel a little bit of a chuckle before we move on. Okay. Whoopi. See, it's like you said, Joe. We're using names like
It's
Sunny
funny.
and Whoopi. Whoopi closed the segment touting the View as a thinking show. Now, Joe, I understand that probably made you cough a little bit. Okay.
Yeah.
But Whoopi touted that touts the View as a thinking show. That's what she said. And this was according to the writer of this article. She must mean telling you what to think, since there's no balance of conservative and liberal voices whatsoever. But she's got a lot of nerve calling it a thinking show. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. There was only one reason to ever watch that show. That was to see the arguments. If you're into that kind of stuff, it's like watching a train wreck. All right. Or it's like watching, what was his name, Joe? Your favorite wrestler from back in the day. Iron Sheik. Okay.
Oh, the Sheik, dude.
The Sheik.
Follow the Sheik. I've said it many times on Twitter. He'll make you laugh. Pure entertainment. Outstanding.
Yeah. So it's like that same kind of interest when you watch The View. You just want to see a fight because obviously these are not thinking people. So let's move on at the Crusade channel, always on air, always online. You're with the Frontline with Joe and Joe Pasillo and Joe Resinello. Please, wherever you find us, when you're looking around on the internet, on social media, when you see Frontline TV or the Frontline with Joe and Joe, like, subscribe, share, do all that fun stuff, anything that can help us. If you want to drop in a few bucks, for Joe and Joe, patreon.com/the Frontline with Joe and Joe. We would also highly recommend to everybody out there who's listening to our voice to become a premium member at the Crusade channel. Okay, there's a great lineup there. As I said earlier, with Mike Church and Rick Barrett, Kennedy Profession. It's just a phenomenal station, and Mike's doing a phenomenal job spreading the truth. And we encourage all. Joe and I both support the Crusade channel. We get paid nothing to be on the Crusade channel. We're proud to be a part of the Crusade channel. So if you're going to put a few bucks in to something that you think is worthwhile, we're telling you that the Crusade channel is worthwhile, and the Frontline with Joe and Joe is worthwhile, because we're all on the same page and we're all trying to spread the truth. And you have to spread the truth because we have people like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, okay, that is out there who, let's just say, she doesn't tell the truth. And where are we going with that, Joe Rossinello?
Well, this is just, these comments are just absurd. Obviously, she was talking about what Greg Abbott put forth in Texas. Basically saying, I mean, it begins with, she wants to limit. What did Abbott say? He wants to eliminate all rapists. When asked about the new abortion law not having rape or incest exceptions, and she's calling it disgusting. But then she goes on. And
yeah, I'm not gonna lie. I'm not gonna lie to you, Joe. I got a little confused about what was being said there by both like what she was trying to say. But I think it's the more important part is what you're about to say.
I mean, I want to read it because I want to get it right, and then we can comment on it. She says this: what this is about is controlling women's bodies and controlling people who are not cisgender men. I'll be honest with you. Let me stop right there.
Please do.
What is cisgender? What does that mean? I'm being serious. Like, I'm not exactly hip. I don't know what's going on. But when I read these things, what is that? And I say that, like, seriously, what is it? I don't even know.
I believe, I can only say I believe that it means a heterosexual man. But they don't use words like heteronormative or heterosexual anymore. They use words like cisgender. Now, this is part, in my opinion, I think I'm correct. This is part of the way these Marxists operate. They try to be confusing. They want to confuse you. So you got words like you said, like cisgender. Okay. And by the way, you said that you wanted to make sure that you got her quote right. You better get her quote right, because if not, guess what you are? You're a racist. So it's like when you don't use like words like cisgender, or you misquote AOC and they're ready to call you names. But it's like you said, Joe, I don't know what cisgender. I think it means heterosexual male.
Okay. That's, I learned something tonight. Didn't know. I read it. I said, I don't even know what that is. So she said, what this is about is controlling women's bodies and controlling people who are not cisgender men. Someone like me, who is a woman, or any menstruating person in this country, cannot make decisions over their own body. People like Governor Abbott and Mitch McConnell want to have more control over a woman's body than that woman or that person has over themselves. What that shares with rape culture is that sexual assault is about the abuse of power, and that a sexual assault is about asserting control over another person. And the ease with which these men seek to do that to another person is outrageous. It's morally reprehensible. They cannot even begin to understand the agonizing decisions that people have to make in cases of miscarriage, rape, and incest. Okay, once again, the straw argument, rape. Less than 1% of all abortions are the result of rape. Number one.
Right.
Number two, only women have periods. Only women menstruate. Throwing that out there is ludicrous. It's so stupid, I can't take it. What's even more sick is that people listen to that dribble. And many of them are highly educated. And many of them know exactly that it's dribble and it's ridiculous.
Yes.
But they go along with it because it's the thing to do for now.
Right.
We're going to look back at this period when it's gone. I was talking to a friend of mine who lives in Europe, Morris Fitzpatrick. You know Morris. He's going to be in. He's actually going to be at Notre Dame doing some lectures on his new project with what's his face, the gentleman from Ireland that won the Nobel Peace Prize, John Hume. Anyway, I was talking to him today. When this period passes by, for however long it's going to be here, it's going to be comments like this that people are going to be like, I cannot even believe that this is serious, that we're talking about people who are menstruating or alluding to the fact that are not women. That is ridiculous. And if you don't go along with it, you're somehow a beast.
Right. I mean, here's one thing that as conservatives we have to start doing. I'm tired of watching conservatives call men who are pretending to be women she. I'm really, Joe, I'm tired of it. Now, I don't really call now if somebody, let's say somebody changes their name from Bruce to Caitlin, okay? Okay, I'm not saying I'm going to, all right? But I can understand someone saying, all right, they changed their name to Caitlin, so I'll just use the name Caitlin. That and again, I don't necessarily agree with it wholeheartedly, but at least there's some sort of logic there. But I am not going to call Bruce Jenner a she. And I hear Sean Hannity do it, and I hear others do it. You're capitulating when you do that. When you allow the language to be taken like that because you call someone who is obviously a man a she, you've lost the battle, my friend. You could get up there and you could raise your fist in the air all you want, Sean Hannity. Okay, and the rest of the conservatives that do that, you've ceded the battle. Language, Joe Rissinello. Let's go back to E. Michael Jones for a minute when he talks about logos. Language. Language was given to us by God. We're letting the communists take our language from us. I'm not calling a man a she. I'm not calling a woman pretending to be a man a menstruating person. That's a woman pretending to be a man, and she's a woman, not a menstruating person. Why are we giving up the language, Joe Rissinello?
Well, like I said, it's just the trendy thing to do. I don't even think that a lot of people buy into it. Seriously. There are some that do. But I mean, like the regular person, not living, I call them metrosexuals, living in cities who make tons of money, who drink, you know, as you would say, Grey Goose martinis after work and spend outrageous amounts of money, you know, on lunches and dinners. That's not the regular person in America. Most people, whether they live near a big city or they don't, come home from work, they're struggling, they're working, they're, you know, saving, they're taking care of their kids. And that, even if you're a Democrat, a regular Democrat, again, we're not going to, you know, we're going to agree to disagree on a lot of things, but a person that pays their bills, takes care of their kids, works, listens to that and is like, this woman is crazy. Now, let's talk political strategy. James Carville, very successful individual. I mean, he basically ran and helped Bill Clinton to 2 terms as president and also has had success after Clinton. He has said straight out that the Democrats have to leave behind this type of nonsense. The way he put it, and we've talked about this on the show, on the Crusade channel, always on air and always online. He said the language, once again, getting back to language, and he used Chicago as an example. He said the language on the south side of Chicago is not mirroring the language at the University of Chicago. The two do not relate. And I agree with him 100% on that position. I'm actually amazed he actually said it, because the Democrats have lost their mind. This type of thing, the regular guy who's a Democrat, the regular guy who votes for the Democrats, listens to this and is like, what are you talking about? Dude, she belongs with Whoopi and Sonny. It's like they're cartoons. It's ridiculous.
They were meant, Joe. They were meant for each other. I mean, and the level of inanity and, quite frankly, insanity that, like, you know, amongst these people. You know, again, I don't know how we, as people who profess to possess the fullness of the truth, okay, allow this to happen. And again, I'll go back to language. You're not gonna change my language. That's what got Jordan Peterson in trouble. He didn't take a position one way or another. What he said was, you're not gonna force me to use words I don't want to use. And that's exactly what they're doing. That's part of what we're going to talk about in a little bit if we get to it, about the social credit system that's coming. You don't use our words, you don't eat tonight. Okay, I'll starve. Then we won't let you feed your kids. Like, that's where a lot of this is going. Let's take a quick break. You're listening to the Crusade Channel, your home for the Mike Church Show, Crusade Channel News, the Barrett Brief, and the Kennedy Profession from sun up to sundown. The Crusade Channel is the last live radio station standing. Stick around. Welcome back, everyone, to the Frontline with Joe and Joe Pasillo and Joe Resinello, and we are storming the machine gun nest tonight, Joe, because that's what we think Archbishop Cordileone did, or at least he kicked it, all right? He's kicking it a little bit, and we think he's laying the groundwork for what is going to be, at least in his diocese, an excommunication of Nancy Pelosi, again, for the good of her soul. And we're talking about a lot of the reaction to the Texas heartbeat law, for those of you who are just joining us here on the Crusade Channel, always on air and always online. So yeah, let's Joe, you know, we've nauseated our audience enough by talking about Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, okay? But there are no civilians, Joe. Okay, there are no civilians. Christopher Bedford, in the Federalist, I believe, in fact, I'm almost sure he's a faithful Roman Catholic. Okay, great writer, very, very super duper smart guy. Okay, he's saying the left is making it very clear you're not sitting on that fence. We're at war, and if you're not on our side, you better be on their side, but you're not going to be a civilian because we'll take you out. Let's talk about that a little bit.
Well, I mean, obviously, like you said, Chris Bedford opined on this fight for life. I just want to read a small excerpt from that article in the Federalist. I think he has it completely correct. He says this: be it sanctuary cities or bathroom laws, much of the modern left feels more and more justified in any action they take to shut you down or oppose you, regardless of the law. And nothing is more sacred to the left than abortion. Having long shed the safe, legal, and rare lie of the 1990s, the abortion of children has achieved an Ark of the Covenant status, with all who touch or even approach it becoming worthy of pitiless destruction. Simply speaking of it, without active celebration in heresy, you don't even need to be actively engaged in the battle to be targeted for destruction. He's right. There are certain things, and this is something I was talking again to my friend who's living in Europe, who's very attuned to American politics. You can't even say in some circles that you're pro-life. You can't even say it. People look at you cross-eyed. I mean, like, never mind not agree with it. Like, I'm not asking you to agree. Well, I'm hoping you agree with it, but I mean, we're just having, say, a discussion, you know, in the public square. Say, you're just having a conversation, right, and you say, right, well, I'm pro-life. I just said this recently. I was dropping my kid off at school, and there was a woman. She was very pregnant, and she was one of the moms. And I said, oh, my gosh, when's the baby due? My wife is due October 1st. She's like, oh, it's my third child, but I think I'm done. And she goes, wow, you have 5 kids. And I said, well, we are open to life. And I saw a woman standing next to her, like, look at me, like her eyes she didn't say anything. I don't know what's going through her head, but she definitely looked towards me when I said that. Maybe she was affirming me. Maybe she was happy someone said that. I don't know. Maybe she thought I was crazy. Either way, and that's standing in front of a Catholic school. Like, people can't say that. Like, right, in many professional circles, in any state,
right,
it doesn't matter. Anywhere you could be, you say, well, I'm open to life. I'm pro-life in every way, from womb to tomb. I'm pro-life. People are like, and in some places they're coming at you. And that's what Bedford's talking about.
Well, we see, I ran into Father Fidelis Moshinsky over the weekend. Okay. My wife and I went up to see the Franciscan Sisters of the Renewal, and Father was there celebrating Mass. That's why I bring him up, because that's why you could see firsthand exactly how rabid they are You know, forget about even saying you're pro-life, Joe, or saying you're open to life. How about just praying on a sidewalk, which I always thought was an American's right. If I want to pray on the sidewalk, I'll pray on the sidewalk. It doesn't matter if Planned Parenthood's across the street or Starbucks is across the street. Okay, if I want to pray on the sidewalk, you see their reaction. You see the level of hatred in their eyes. Whereas we talked about before at the front line with Joe and Joe, it's probably guilt, especially on the part of the women, because they probably have killed a child or two in the womb. So it's probably guilt. But you're absolutely right. You can't open your mouth. I would say this. I might, I rarely disagree with you. I think we do have to be a little relative in one way. Okay, we live in the godforsaken state of New Jersey. That's why I think it's more difficult for us to take a position that's more traditional on anything: gay marriage, gender ideology, abortion, okay, all of it. You go to a place like Texas, you more than outside of Austin, you're more than likely to find pro-life people.
I would actually, you're right. In fairness,
you go to Nebraska, okay, which by the way, I found out, I never knew this. I found out recently. Nebraska is a heavily Catholic state.
Know why that is actually? Because of that bishop that Cameron talked about. That shows you the fruit of a good bishop. He said he interviewed, he starts with a B, someone in the chat room.
Bishop Bruska. I think his name is Bishop Bruska.
I believe, well, that guy was a fantastic bishop. The fruit of his, what's it called? Episcopacy? I'm not using the right. Yeah, that's the right word. Is still germinating because he was fantastic. I mean, I say that maybe because I guess like we live next to New York, which is like, a very, very, it is the city in America. In many cases, it's the city in the world in terms of generating money. But and people have more of a, for a lack of a better way to explain it, quote unquote, progressive ideas. I mean, we live in the shadows of it. And you're right. If you go into, say, rural Arkansas, or you're in, I don't know, Mississippi, or, but here's the thing: in cities, people take that position. Quote unquote, sophisticated people in those states, even in states like Mississippi and Wyoming, which are very conservative, sophisticated, quote unquote, people take that position. Like they simply do. Like you talk to them, you're in a room full of lawyers. You're chatting, you're at some, I don't know, high-end corporate event doesn't matter. Pick the state. It could be Texas. It could be Dallas. You mentioned those ideas. It goes to show you how it's just how it was when Jesus was around. The people who are running things are just out of touch with normal people in many respects. They just are. Like, a lot of times education, money, a soft life, money makes your life soft. I mean, people do things for you because you have money, like you don't cut your lawn. Like I know people that have big properties. They don't shovel snow. The snow comes, they hire somebody, even if it costs $500-600. Take it away. I'm not going outside. Money makes you soft. Frankly, I'll be honest with you. I actually think I think differently on many levels than a lot of Americans. But I actually think if you do make a lot of money and you raise your kids that way, I think you're not doing them a service. I'm a big believer in the middle for children. I think kids in the middle grow up stronger. And I look at my own friends, and I'll be honest with you. I even look at myself, dude. Me and my friends will eat some of these kids alive, dude. I mean, on a million different fronts. I'm not even talking about physically fighting them. I'm just talking about pure grit. Like the going gets tough, dude. You're just like, we'll do what it takes. What does it take? You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, I gotta pay bills. All right, whatever. You want me to unload a truck? All right, I'll do it. You want me to do this? Deliver pizza? Okay, whatever. You want me to do this? Okay, whatever. These kids are soft as hell.
Well,
Like
I will say this. Just I mean, we always talk about sacrifice and ways that we could carry our cross, and I'm not saying this because you're my brother-in-law. I'm not saying this to just to pat you on the back. You show that just the way you live your life. In other words, married late, married in your 40s, 4 kids and one on the way. You know what I mean? That's grit. You really want to come down to it. That softness you talk about, Joe Rossinello, that really is indicative of a lot of men in America. Okay. And I'm not going to I'm not saying you're the strongest guy in the world. I'm not saying I'm the strongest guy in
no,
the
I'm
world.
not.
But
Definitely not.
having been told no when you were a kid, having had to do without when you were a kid, okay, having had to take your lumps like me when we were kids, okay, that helped us because I don't have the kids you have. I'm in a different circumstance, but we have that grit. You know why? Because we're not soft. Because we were told no, not in a physical. I'm going to come out and punch you in the face type way.
No, I'm not.
But we look at a challenge and we say, okay, I can deal with that.
Well,
Whereas
well,
others might just cave.
well, that's
And
what I'm
something that's not
saying.
even
You
really
know what
that challenging.
failure is because you've experienced it. And everything wasn't handed to you. And here's another thing. I mean, like, I knew if I didn't make it happen for me, it's not going to happen. Like, there is no like backup. It's me.
Right.
And this is why I say, like, you're not doing your kid a service, even if you make the money. Like, say you
Right.
make $800,000 a year. You live in some of these communities. People aspire to that. And
Yeah.
then, to be honest with you, your kid, to be truthful, when push comes to shove, can't make it. Like, again, I'll refer to people I grew up with. And some of them, they're not dumb, but they're not like Harvard educated. Dude, they'll run circles around some of these kids.
Right.
Circles around them. I
Yeah.
mean, and that is, again, getting back to, problems in America. I mean, like, but I think that's, I mean, we're kind of going off the, the
That's
beaten
okay.
path
That's
here.
okay.
But I mean, people, like, they aspire to raise their kids. Like, I'm going to give my kid what I didn't have.
That's a bad attitude.
I mean,
That's
I'll
a
be
bad
good with you.
attitude.
If I had exactly what I had, my kids, I think that they'd come out pretty well. Frankly, you don't have to give your kid everything. And frankly, the word no in life, even not just from you, but life itself, when you want to do something, and frankly, you just don't have the money. I don't have the money to do it. I'd like a car. I don't have the money. I'd like to go here. I don't have the money. That's a healthy thing. And it forms you, but we don't have that anymore.
I'm reminded when you say that about the car. I'm reminded about the fact that the first car I had was my Aunt Addie's 1975 Dodge Dart. No, and I got my driver's license in 1984. So she was going to get rid of the car and just whatever. And they end up giving it to me. So it was like that was my mother and father's response to I want a car. Well, your Aunt Addie said you could have her car. And Joe, let me tell you something. That was still, back then, you didn't get a car. You didn't get a car from your old man. If you got a hand-me-down from your aunt or a relative, we had another relative after that car died. I had a 75 Chevy Nova. But yeah, like you said, that's why I was smiling, though, because what you said reminded me of that. But think about this. Let's stay on the story a second. Joe, did you mention John Gibson from Tripwire?
No, I did not.
So here's the thing about civilians, okay? And this is one thing I don't understand. And boards of directors need to be reined in America, even if it's legally or through regulation, okay? Boards of directors need to be reined in. They have too much power. I believe that, okay? Here's a guy, John Gibson. He was the president of video game developer Tripwire. He, quote unquote, outed himself as being pro-life, okay? And at least one business client threatened to end their contract, and Gibson was pushed to resign. The company he co-founded even released a statement condemning him. Now, this is what I get about abortion and the argument from the other side. They think it's morally reprehensible to be pro-life. Now, think about that, and I want to read you something, okay? Quote, our leadership team at Tripwire, they wrote, are deeply sorry and are unified in our commitment to take swift action and to foster a more positive environment. You're for slaughtering babies in the womb. Can you explain to me how I'm supposed to think of that as a positive environment? But you see, Joe, it's like we say on the Crusade channel, always on air and always online all the time. We live in an era, and this was prophesied a long time ago. I forgot by whom. Maybe it was Our Lady in one of her visits. Okay. When evil is called good and good is called evil. You're making John Gibson out to be a bad guy because he's against the slaughter of innocent human beings in the womb. And moreover, you're making yourselves out to be virtuous because you call being pro-abortion a more positive environment. Joe, where am I wrong here? Well, I mean,
Well,
I
they're
just shake
blind.
my
I know
head
what
at
it,
this stuff.
as you were saying that, I was thinking of the movie as well as the book Lord of the Flies, and in it, it's very well, I guess, staged, whereby they show that these were good English kids in like a boarding school, like high end type of deal, and they turn into savages, and they were going to kill. They killed the one kid, Piggy, and they were behaving horribly. And then when the adults come into the room, they cry. They see the error of their ways. You see, that's sort of like what we're seeing on this abortion subject. People are blind. They're in this like world view, and they just don't see. But at the end of life, they will, because we're all going to stand before God. I mean, when we read these books as children, they're supposed to teach us something. That's why we read some of these books, like Animal Farm, Lord of the Flies, On the Western Front. The list goes on. I mean, we've all read them in high school and in college. I mean, but people get caught up in this worldview and they rationalize things. They're blinded by their own lifestyles, by their own pleasures. They don't have any boundaries on their life, or frankly, do they prescribe to any religious boundaries on the culture or on anyone's life for that matter, and they get lost. Joe, I mean, it's very sad. It's very sad when you see this, because ultimately, like we've said, they're destroying themselves. They're just,
well, Joe, let their destruction come. I hope it comes swiftly then. In other words, I mean the destruction of their ideology and their stupid ideas. I don't want to see people get destroyed. Then I hope the destruction of their movement, their ideology, their bad and evil, immoral, disgusting ideas. I hope the destruction of those things comes. But I do want to point out, because we're going to probably be coming up to a break, and then we only have one more segment, and we want to maybe move on. But I will say this about our friend Chris Bedford. He said the fight is real. It's here. It's coming for every Christian and pro-lifer who opens his mouth. He might be listening to the Frontline with Joe and Joe also.
I'm not sure. Be.
Of course. But he did say this, and I think it's very important, because if there's one thing they do a lot better than us on the other side, Joe, they stick together. They do support one another. Chris Bedford says we must support Texas. We must support every person who takes a hit for it, and we must be prepared to take the hit ourselves. As you always say, Joe, get out of the boat. Get out of the boat. You might get lumped up a little bit, but you got to get out of the boat. He said every little girl and little boy spared death by this new law needs us, and we're in it together. I think he's spot on.
I would agree.
You know what I mean? And again, I mean, it's to the point now where if anybody, Joe, real quick in the last minute before the break, does anybody really think they're going to sit on that fence? I mean, I wonder sometimes. See, we rail against those who propose really bad ideas on the other side, evil ideas, immoral ideas. Okay, what do you say to the person who sits on the fence, who doesn't even want to take a position either way? I think I pity that person more. What say you?
Well, I mean, obviously, Christ is very clear about that, about the lukewarm. I think choices are being made now, particularly under this regime that's in office. You can't just sit on the fence. They're not allowing it. And frankly, listen, on a bigger, perspective and on a bigger stage, I mean, our own faith, Christ is very clear, the indifferent. As good old Father George, who used to say mass for us in the ShopRite parking lot during the COVID, times, he said it. He said, Joe, you don't float into heaven. A lot of people think that, you're a quote unquote good guy. You float right in. It doesn't work that way. And this is not my opinion. Jesus said so. He said it's narrow. The road to heaven is narrow, and the road to heaven is about dying to self. That's the road to heaven. Obviously, it's through Christ's sacrifice. Please don't misunderstand me. I get it. We don't earn heaven. I get it. But my point is, you don't just float in there.
Right.
And that's about the lukewarm stuff. I mean, there's too many people. Christ very clearly, gave, Christ being God, the triune God, he said, we're to honor God above all things. That means all your decisions should go through that filter, all of them.
Joe, let's take a quick break. You're listening to the Crusade Channel. You're home for the Mike Church Show, Crusade Channel News, the Barrett Brief, and Kennedy Profession. From sun up to sundown, the Crusade Channel is the last live radio station standing. Stick around. We'll be right back. Welcome back, everyone, to the front line with Joe and Joe. Joe Pasillo and Joe Resinello weigh in the breach on the Crusade Channel. Always on air and always online at crusadechannel.com, the last live radio station standing. Remember to get in the chat room, the only social media out there worth actually socializing in, at crusadechannel.com/chat. Joe, porn's got to end, Joe. Legal porn has to end. It's got to go back underground. Which you're probably never going to eliminate porn. It's been around for thousands of years, but it's got to go back underground. It's got to become illegal again. Talk to us about that, Joe Resinello.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that because it's a multi-billion-dollar industry. One could say it's our greatest and biggest export in America is pornography, and money talks and BS walks. And we all know that, you talk about shutting something down. I mean, I'm sure they have their lobbyists. It's just a multi-billion-dollar industry. It'd probably be very hard to do. This story, though, from LifeSite News, coming from Joseph Summers, I found interesting because it involves a minor. And it's funny. You sent me this story. I've never even heard of these things. What's the what do you call it? Red tube? Or like where some of these like videos are on. I've never even heard of that. I mean, like this is like a world that's going on in America that frankly,
Joe, it's widespread. Porn. I remember back when the internet was first coming up. I was unfortunately I was a stockbroker on Wall Street, and I remember talking to a guy one time. Said, Joe, I'm gonna do business with you. All right. But don't you buy me none of those internet stocks because the two biggest businesses on the internet are gambling and porn, and I want nothing to do with them. All right. And I think it's still true to this day. I mean, selling things on Amazon is probably the biggest thing now. But Joe, porn and gambling, I mean, are such a big part of the internet. But let's stay with porn. Joe, it's unfortunately because it's right at your fingertips. And because men are weak, okay? We are talking about particularly men, okay? Women don't have as much of a problem with porn. Men do, okay? Because men are weak, it's rampant, Joe. It's all over the place.
Well, let's get to this story. A federal district judge in California issued a ruling that would allow a child pornography and sex trafficking suit to move forward against Pornhub and its parent company, MindGeek. The judge is Cormac Carney, and he ruled that there is sufficient evidence that MindGeek acted as a content creator, meaning that the company has no legal immunity in the lawsuit. The lawsuit against MindGeek was filed last February by two anonymous women who had videos uploaded to MindGeek sites, Pornhub and RedTube, without their consent. Now, pay attention to this. This is what shocked me. One of the litigants, a California resident identified only as Jane Doe 2, alleges that MindGeek and Pornhub had profited from videos filmed by her ex-boyfriend when she was 16. The videos were posted in December in 2019 on RedTube, with one video remaining on its site front page garnering 30,000 views. Now, this is the part that really shocked me. The suit also noted that MindGeek is aware of the child pornography and exploitation posted on Pornhub, promoting them with playlists such as Less Than 18, the best collection of young boys and underaged.
What does that tell you?
How is that possible?
What does that tell you? What does that tell you? Now, number one, think about the fact that they're getting business by flashing little headlines like that and titles like that. But they're saying, see, this is what I mean about these scumbags, and they are scumbags, okay? Is they know that these videos, in this lawsuit, this girl's saying she was 16 years old, okay? And they basically, they raped her, and they put it on there, and MindGeek let it happen. But when you have categories like Less Than 18,
that's my point.
You know it. You know what's going on. You know it's child pornography. And they'll say, well, a 16-year-old is not a child. According to the law, a 16-year-old is a child. So I don't know what you're talking about. I hope they get the balls sued off them.
I don't even know how you could have the audacity to categorize something like that. Now, if this happened, even if it was done in accident, you're still, in my view, legally liable, because you have to do due diligence. If you ask me, if I was the judge, did you do due diligence? That would be my question. But to label things, I mean, you see, this is how disturbed things are. And Joe, I'll like I said, I mean, we've had these conversations. I mean, we'll see what happens in 2022. We'll see what happens in 2024. There is no political solution to this mess. It is the heart of the American person is twisted. Yeah. It's twisted. Like, are there good people in America? Absolutely. There are good people everywhere in America. In every state across America, you will find good, solid humans. However, when stuff like this is legally protected in this nation, when you have an industry, billions and billions of dollars that are basically produced and exported legally, something is wrong. There is no value add, zero from any of this, zero. And that's not speaking from a puritanical position. That's not speaking from, oh, you're just a prude, you're just a this, or you're just a that. No value. In fact, if you're a man and you listen to what I'm saying, it makes you impotent. You will not be able to have regular intercourse with your wife or your girlfriend. You shouldn't be doing that anyway, but you won't, because it is harmful to you. Right. Yet it's eaten up like there's no tomorrow.
Yep. Yep. And that's why I'm going to be praying that this lawsuit gets ahead of steam. In other words, that this is being allowed to move forward. Carney, the judge, Joe, he stated in his ruling that, quote, the defendant's conduct has materially contributed to the creation of child pornography on its platforms, adding that the site instructs users how to name their videos in a way that would target individuals interested in child pornography. How do you even think for a second you're going to be protected legally from a lawsuit when you're targeting? And the sick disgust, Joe, for as bad as I ever was, I don't judge anybody. I judge those guys, those sick bastards that want to watch child pornography. Leaving that aside, because there's weirdos in the world, there are sick people in the world. Leaving that aside for a second, this scumbag company, MindGeek, targets those guys. How on earth are they going to be sheltered from a lawsuit? No way. And that's what Judge Carney's saying in this. And it's about time. The Alan Dershowitzes of the world need to be pushed back against. As you said, Joe Rossinello, you don't need to be a brain surgeon to make the statement truthfully, okay, that pornography has no socially redeeming value, none whatsoever. Okay, I don't even know how the feminists, many of them, support pornography. Many of them don't, in fairness to the feminists. Many of them don't. They think it's exploitation of women, but many of them do. Many feminists think it's women's power over, again, that over their bodies, and they can do what they want. I like to tell these women. I like to tell Jenna Jameson or Stormy Daniels or any of them. You understand that most men look at you as a pig. You understand? They think you're hot. You're a hot pig, but you're a pig nonetheless. You think guys respect you? They don't care. You have no power. This is I am woman, hear me roar type stuff. You take off your clothes and you have sex from in front of a camera for money. That's what you do. Most men look at you rightfully as a pig. Is
Well,
that
not
what you
just
want
that.
to do?
I mean, I'm gonna sound like a prude, but and I even thought this before I was married. You know, obviously, you know, when I took my faith a little bit more seriously, you see the world differently. But when I see women, particularly young women, dress a certain way, I say to myself, first of all, I don't even look at them. That's number one. I mean that. I look down at the ground. If I'm walking, I'm not even just saying that. I don't even look at them. I have a wife. There's no reason for me to look at them. And I don't. However, and I'm not just saying that, I'm just telling you the truth. But
Right.
I look at them and I say to myself, do you actually think you're going to find a nice guy dressed like that? Do you actually think that somebody who has their act together, that is focusing on good things in life, actually is going to take you serious dressed like that? It's tragic. It is simply tragic. And when I see young girls, when I mean young, 16, I walk my daughter to school in the morning and I see some of the high school kids, the public high school kids, walk past, and I say to myself, good Lord, look at this girl. Look at this girl. She's a child, and look how she's dressed.
What about the parents, Joe?
Well, I mean, that's another story. But I mean, I'm just talking about, there's a saying, and I'm going to tell my daughter this: you attract flies with honey. Honey attracts flies. And if you dress like that, that's exactly who you're going to attract: flies.
Mm-hmm.
And it's sad. And you see, again, do I say women have to wear a burqa? No.
No.
And it's the same thing with men walking around, to be honest with you, with like muscle t-shirts. There's no sense of decency
Joe,
anymore.
it's simple modesty.
That's
all
all.
it is.
You don't have to. You could dress very nice.
Right. The church calls for modesty. I've seen many in my life, many attractive women, okay, in my life. They dress modestly. They still look beautiful. They don't have to show everything as they're walking down the street. You go to New York City, Joe, you see what you get walking down the street. Are you kidding? These girls got everything hanging out. By the way, one of our friends in the chat room, female KC Royals fan, she put it out there. It's Bruskowitz, Bishop Bruskowitz, from Nebraska.
Thank you.
When we thank you, KC Royals fan. But yeah, that's something that I think, when you look at, let's say, how Mexico was converted and did away with human sacrifice, that came as a result of Our Lady visiting Guadalupe. I firmly believe, I've said this on the Crusade channel, always on air and always online before, America needs a Guadalupe moment. America needs Our Lady, and that's it's divine intervention. Our blessed Lord sending his mama to come and talk to us in America is perhaps what's going to change some of this stuff. Because like you said, Joe, until we get it out of our heads that pornography is A-okay, or that abortion is a choice, or that you could have menstruating people as opposed to just women. You don't call them menstruating people, you just call them women, because men don't menstruate. Until, if we're going to break out of that, we're going to need our blessed Lord maybe to send his mama and to come and straighten us out. Hey, Mexico was converted so that America can be converted back. And remember,
Well, I'll
we're
tell you.
supposedly a Christian nation, Joe. You know, we're
I mean,
supposedly a Christian nation.
ultimately, what could happen and what I think is going to happen, I mean, John Horvat, who we've interviewed a number of times, it'll be the story of the prodigal son. I mean, Cardinal George has alluded to that as well. Ultimately, our society, I think the ball is rolling down the hill at a rate that, frankly, it's not going to stop. Something could stop it, an event that could bring people together, a suffering. I mean, you would have thought to a degree what happened during these years with COVID. Businesses were shut down. People were affected financially. I mean, like I said, I know people who have been deeply impacted financially because, frankly, they couldn't go to work. I know a number of them, actually. You would have thought that that could have shaken some sense into the society. It didn't. And again, you know, you use the biblical illustration of the Egyptians and the Israelites, the locusts, the plagues, the firstborn. God was basically, in a nice way, believe it or not, because he still allowed them to exist, persuade them to change, but they wouldn't. They were obstinate to the very end, and they were.
That's one of the. Go ahead.
No, and they were ultimately destroyed.
Well, see, the thing is, that's one thing, and let's get biblical for a second. It's one thing that I get very, very, very upset about when people talk about, like, especially with atheists and people who think they know scripture or they think they know what it is that we believe, when they say that God is arbitrary and capricious. No, God sent his own people. All right, just to give an example of God's patience, God sent his own people, the Jews, into bondage, okay, in Egypt. And he gave those who were occupying the Holy Land an opportunity to repent. We know that from scripture. They didn't. Do you know when, like, atheists like Richard Dawkins talks about the destruction of the Canaanites, when God ordered the Israelites to go in there and put the ban on them, every man, woman, child, animal? Do you know what the Canaanites were all about? They made the Aztecs look like choir boys. Okay. You're talking about utter depravity. God was still patient with them. 400 years the Jews were in bondage in Egypt. How about Nineveh? When he sent Jonah, because he was patient with Nineveh, he sent Jonah. He said they give them time to repent, and at least for a time, Nineveh repented. I hate when people say that about God. Okay, I hate when they say God's arbitrary and capricious. No, he's not. He's very, very, very patient, but his patience has a limit. And when we keep spitting in his face through porn, through abortion, through all of it, we keep spitting in his face. And then we sell this stuff to children. Okay. What did Jesus say about those who bring sin to any of the little ones? Okay. This is the evil that Paul talks about, the spiritual wickedness in high places. Joe, you know as well as I do, these Pornhub and Mind Geek people, they're protected by politicians, right? And judges, right? In other words, that's spiritual wickedness in high places. That's what we're fighting against. I think this is a very big development. I'm hoping to see these companies now be able to get sued left and right and potentially get ground into dust. All right. But in the meantime, I'm going to pray for a Guadalupe moment and Our Lady come here and hopefully straighten us out a little bit, because I think that that's what it's going to take, to be honest.
Well, it will take, listen, God ultimately sees everything. I mean, as you were saying that, I was thinking of the scripture passage about the fig tree, that he said, give it another year. Also, there's a couple allusions of a fig tree. Christ cursed the fig tree and then they found it withered. I mean, like, people getting back to the conversation we had earlier about being soft. I mean, Americans, we have a very easy life, Joe Pasillo. And frankly, a lot of the folks nowadays are living on past generations' successes. And it's come to a place where you have a woman like Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez talking about men menstruating and serious educated people taking her serious. I mean, we've come to a place that, frankly, I don't know how to shake sense into people. We talk constantly about it. You talk to people, they disregard it. They don't take it serious. You talk about sitting on the fence, they just don't care. Meanwhile, our children are getting eaten alive in the culture, literally
Yeah.
eaten alive.
Yeah.
You know, people always used to think just because you lived in a nice town, your kids aren't going to be affected. Not anymore. The culture is eating them alive.
Well, Joe, look at what they've done. They knew that there's enclaves of people in this country that their leftist ideology hasn't gotten to. That's one of the reasons, just to give you an example, Joe Rossinello on the Crusade channel. That's why they've taken over sports, because sports goes everywhere. Everybody likes sports in America, right? You like football, you like baseball. I know you're a big basketball fan, have been for years. Okay. That's why they do things like that. That's why they get into movies, so that you can't have your little enclave. You can't have your community. They'll get to your kids through sports, through woke commercials when you're watching a Jet game, or Colin Kaepernick getting on his knee, or two guys kissing when you're watching a YouTube video, okay, about scripture, about let's say, for argument's sake, Bible study, like by Dr. Brant Petrie, and when they go to a commercial, you get your commercial, it has two guys kissing. That's what they do in this culture war. They know where you are, they know what they're doing, and that's why they send things out through these other means. By, like I said, gave you an example. That's why they do it with sports. Joe, we only have about 5 minutes left. Let's talk about another defeat for the left, this time's up movement and their hypocrisy, which ultimately led to them getting disbanded. Like I said, we have about maybe 3 or 4 minutes left.
What is, I mean, I read the article. This time's up. I didn't even understand the illustration of it. Time's up. What?
So I'll introduce a story for a change. So what it was is Time's Up was the group that was put together by Shonda Rhimes, Katie McGrath, Nina Shaw, Eva Longoria, another disgraziad Catholic, Hillary Rosen, and what their thing was they want to prevent the sexual harassment and abuse of women, in as it relates to, let's say, the revelations of Harvey Weinstein, and things like that. Okay, but what happened was their real raison d'etre was that they wanted to go after Republicans and Christians and conservatives, and what they found was they were actually actively attacking the women who were abused and harassed by, guess who? Disgraziad Andrew Cuomo and the current regime commander, Joe Biden, because they attacked Tara Reid and they attacked Cuomo's accusers. So you know what? Their hypocrisy got blown up. Okay, you saw it front and center, and guess what? They all quietly disbanded. Not before Joe making a ton of money in the form of contributions to their cause. So Nolte wrote about this in the Federalist, and he basically said, "Time's up for Time's Up," because they got shown to be nothing but a bunch of hypocrites.
Well, it's funny how that Me Too movement died. I mean, I could remember, it began with like Charlie Rose and that other guy. What the hell was his name? He did the news on. He used to do like that Hollywood show. He was, I can't believe I can't think of his name. I could see his face. He was he was one of the first guys that got tagged. But it's over. They don't focus on, I mean, it's on the back burner. I think Tara Reid and Biden had something to do with it because they couldn't pursue it. Because if they had to be, to be honest with you, if they were going to keep their integrity, they would have pursued Joe Biden. They chose not to.
Well, again, according to John Nolte, it was the reality. This is Nolte. This is a direct quote. He said, "The reality, and we all knew it, was that Time's Up was a partisan organization designed to push leftism and destroy conservatives, Republicans, and Christians by way of accusations of sexual misconduct." Now, what's the problem there? The problem for them, that's what they say, is a YP. That's a your problem. That's not a Joe and Joe problem. Your problem is that what you've shown yourself to be is a bunch of hypocrites, because it wasn't the Republicans and the conservatives and the Christians that were abusing people, because you couldn't find them. The only people that were found to be abusing women were your people, the people who pushed the abortion agenda and everything else, particularly Biden and Cuomo. Joe, we have about a minute left. Any final thoughts, brother?
Well, I find, it's kind of funny. I've said this to my wife. The corporations will drop this woke stuff as fast as they picked up on it. And just like they dropped this Me Too stuff, because they don't pursue it anymore. They simply don't. I mean, you could look at it from the Clinton perspective. You could look at, even how Hillary Clinton was even supported with all the nonsense that happened with her husband says everything. These people and these beliefs, Joe, are very superficial. It's not going to last forever. However, it's left a mark on America and left a mark on American culture. The sooner it ends, the better. Obviously, we have to stand up and speak out against it. We have to pray and fast.
Right. And I think you're absolutely right about that. I think that's part of what we're doing here is, we're spreading the truth out there on the Crusade channel, always on air, always online at crusadechannel.com, the last live radio station standing. Remember, it would behoove you to become a premium member of the Crusade channel. Joe and I are both members. We support my church and everything he does on the Crusade channel because it's a great, great station. So we're going to know that you're going to love the entire lineup. Please be sure to follow Joe and I on Facebook, on YouTube, wherever you can. Like, subscribe, share, do all that fun stuff. And we want to thank you for listening to the Crusade Channel, your home for the Mike Church Show, Crusade Channel News, the Barrett Brief, and Kennedy Profession from sun up to sundown. The Crusade Channel is the last live radio station standing. We'll see you next week. Got kind of tired of packing and unpacking, town to town, up and down the dial. Maybe you and me were never meant to be. Just maybe think of me once in a while. I'm at WKRP in Cincinnati.